So I'm down the allotment today and I'm sowing seeds, and it's a perfect time really to show you the progress of my seedlings from last month and this month, and just to validate really the advice that I've given in previous months in terms of what seeds to sow at what time of year. And I like to do that validation both to prove to myself that the advice that I'm giving is actually reasonable advice, but also because I think there's a lot of bad advice given out by YouTube gardeners. There's lots of people looking at the backs of seed packets and saying, oh, this says you can sow it in October, and so they're saying, yeah, sow this in October. And they're not really giving much in terms of advice about what you can expect to achieve. So something might, for example, stay alive over winter, but it's not going to give a harvest over winter. You know, you're going to pick just a few little shoots or something like that. What I'm trying to do is give you advice about what you can actually realistically, productively harvest all year round, and not just repeat stuff that's on the back of seed packets. Now, of course, not everybody's doing that, and I think I'm also sometimes guilty of pushing the boundaries in terms of what you can achieve. And so, as I say, I like to just prove that the things that I'm talking about actually are achievable. And so with that preamble, let's take a look. So first up's the celery. Now, I took my celery out of the polytunnel last week, I think it was, and we froze that, and this is the new batch of celery. Now, I have never done celery quite so late, but it's coming on pretty nicely. I think there's a good chance that this is going to give me a nice crop over winter, but it's not proven, so that's just an experiment. I've got one of two trays here of Tokyo Cross white turnips. I don't think there's enough time now to bring those to maturity. They will overwinter, they'll stay alive, especially if they're under cover, but I think they'll just go to seed straight away when they start growing again in March. So I'm not going to plant those out. And white Lisbon spring onions, so these are going to do well now indoors, planted under cover. They'll probably go interplanted into spinach and lettuce beds in the low tunnels, and I've already done some like that, so I'll show you those in a minute. I wouldn't plant these outside now. I think they won't get big enough and strong enough to really thrive outside, but you could give it a go. There's always a chance. So onions are pretty hardy. These are mixed lettuces, so these are going to go in the polytunnel. These are going to do great. And then there's more successions of lettuce down here that will get planted out towards the end of the week. These will go in low tunnels. And again, I've just done some, so I'll show you those. So these are spinach. This is my third succession of spinach. And that's my fourth succession of spinach. And a few of those will go with that just to make up the numbers. That's about it really. I think these will give a small harvest in winter, a very small harvest probably. These won't. These will give a harvest in spring. The nice thing is that these little ones here, they won't go to seed as early as these ones, and obviously the ones in the ground will go to seed even earlier. So I will get probably a period of about a month whilst all of this spinach that I've got is progressively going to seed. Now, I've got a lot of spinach and a lot of lettuce, and I need that to have enough over winter. I need about 6 times as much lettuce and spinach in winter as I do in, about now, for example, or in May, June time, in order to have enough. So we have a load, and then we really clear it rapidly in spring and get it replanted. Well, actually in February, and get it all replanted or interplanted. And then I've got some little brassicas here. There's some Calabrese marathon, some April spring cabbages, some more spring cabbages there, and some little cauliflowers, and they look really sickly. And the reason for that is that it was just too hot for them in September. So these were 9th of September, and they grew all the way through September. September was warm here. I've got some back home that were sown quite a lot later than these, that look so much healthier than these because they've been growing in cooler conditions. So these will overwinter on this bench in larger pots, and then they'll be planted out in February time in the polytunnel, and then the cabbages in March probably outside. They do look, as I say, pretty sickly now, but you'll be amazed probably when I do the next seedling update in a month's time at just how much they've improved, and by the time I'm planting them out in February I anticipate they will look great. And then the final thing I've got here on the allotment, I've got my first succession of broad beans. I'll do another one in November and I'll do another one in February, and I'm doing them in module trays just because we get a lot of mice eating the beans here, so it's just easier to do it that way. The reason I'm doing 3 successions is because I want a successional harvest. So I've got some more turnips there again. I'm not going to plant them out, I just don't think there's time for them to mature now, but I'll show you some that I do think will mature. So these are in the polytunnel. They have been a bit eaten, and so they've been knocked back a little bit by that, but I found the caterpillars and I think I've got rid of them now. So but these are growing nice, they're nice strong plants, they're well rooted, so I think in about a month, 6 weeks time we'll be eating these. Whether this is good use of the polytunnel space, I am not sure, so I might not do this again, because ideally I would have lettuces in here, and I really want to put the lettuces in here in 3 or 4 weeks time, not 6 weeks time. That would make all the difference. So we will see. I might end up only harvesting a proportion of these and just pulling the rest. And then I've got radishes, and to be honest I think this is going to be my last succession of radish. They're doing nice. These will be ready for harvest next week. These will be harvested over a period of 2 to 3 weeks, and yeah, I'm pretty pleased with these. As I say, I'm not going to do another succession of radish now. Again, I don't think, although you will probably get a harvest in late November, December time, the quality will not be that great. That's what I find. We'll switch over to ochre, vastly better than grotty radishes late in the season. And then we've got some baby leaf chard. So this is close to being harvested. This sort of size of leaf is the sort of size that I want, and I'm not going to pick a huge amount of this, just enough to bring some colour to the salad mixes. You can see there has been a bit of leaf mine damage, but that should be finishing now. I just left a few leaves on so I could show you. So I'm just taking these leaves off. They're never going to be edible quality. So there's another one there. But that, I think, is looking quite nice. And so that's another good example of something that you can bring to baby leaf size maturity, and probably bigger, in a polytunnel. I wouldn't plant it outside at this time of year, although, you know, your experience might be different to mine, but that would be my advice. It's too late now. So these are my strawberry runners, all potted up, and these will be going in the polytunnel in January, February time. At the moment they're all looking great. They've all taken really nicely, lots of new leaf growth on them. Just one plant per pot, and I think these are 25 centimetre pots, just about the right size for a single strawberry plant. So there's going to be a really nice early harvest of strawberries in the polytunnel from those. So I've got 2 beds of spring cabbages. I've sowed my spring cabbages quite a bit later, so these are the 10th of August than I have in the past, because what I found was if I sow them any earlier than this, they just go to seed straight away in spring. So sowing them a bit later, they actually get to heart up in spring, and I actually get them when I want them, which is about the beginning of May, just as we're kind of in the middle of the hungry gap. And the brassicas are, you know, the kales, and the colettes and the Brussels sprouts are all finishing. So yeah, it's really nice to have some cabbage at that time of year. And I've just got, these are the very last few radishes, and these should be ready, I guess, about the beginning of December. I've kind of buried them. I find that they get a bit eaten by woodlice, so I will keep earthing them up. So there are little radishes under here, little lovely red radishes, but as I say, I've earthed them up so you can't see them, and nor can the woodlice. So let's just take a quick look down here. What else have we got? This is the spinach we're currently harvesting, interplanted with spring onions, and that bed is also spinach, but it's interplanted with overwintering onions to be harvested May, June time. These are the lettuces we're currently harvesting. This is one of my spinach beds, planted this one last week. This one's planted quite densely, and I will probably harvest every other plant and put an interplant into here in sort of February, March time. And then this is the lettuce bed, interplanted with spring onions. And let's just pop over here. So these are, again, overwintering onions. These were grown from sets. Those were grown from seed, and they're interplanted with bunches of spring onions. So these are all, if I've not said it already, overwintering onions. These are Shenshue yellow, and there's a tough ball. This is going to be garlic, and then these are more spring onions. I've got a mix of spring onions, some undercover, some outside, so I get a nice long successional harvest. And then in the polytunnel I've got lettuces, and then all this bed down here will be progressively cleared and replanted with those lettuces. So one of the great bits of feedback that I got this month was that sometimes telling people what to sow on the 1st of September in September is not giving them enough notice to get ready. So what I'm going to do next year is probably do the videos actually a month in advance so that you can get ready. And then when I do the seedling progress videos, maybe I'll just do a recap of what to sow that month. So that will give people a whole month of lead time to source the seeds, get the seedling trays ready, make space on the windowsills, whatever it is that you need to do. And with that in mind, let's just have a quick preview of what I'm sowing in November. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what I'm going to sow in November. So I'm going to do my second succession of overwintered carrots. So these are the ones we'll be harvesting about the beginning of May. And you want them as late as you can get away with. And I find probably like the last week in October, first week in November is about the right time. They overwinter as tiny little plants, maybe only about an inch tall. And then they burst into life in early February. You get them then harvested about 3 to 4 weeks earlier than if you start them in February, March time. So they will go into containers in the polytunnel. And then I'll do one last tray of lettuce. These are only spares, and they're useful though, because if I get a bed come free in December, which I often do, I'm never quite sure which bed it'll be because it depends on whether certain crops do well or not. Then I've always got a few lettuces just to bung in, and that means I get some of my favourite spring, early summer lettuces really early. So quite a few varieties there. And then this is my, what you might call my main crop of broad beans. My first early broad beans have germinated now, So these should mature about 3 weeks later, in sort of May time probably, and then I'll have one more succession that I'll sow in February, and they'll mature probably late May. I do a tray of microgreens, pea microgreens, every 3 weeks. We don't do any overwintered peas for the pods, but we do them for the greens. And we'll take about 3 cuttings off a tray, and then we'll start another tray. So one every 3 weeks. And then this will be my last succession of overwintered brassicas. I won't do any cauliflowers this late. I find that they just won't mature early enough. But I will do some Calabrese marathon and some Brussels sprouts for leaves. The marathon should be ready in May, and the Brussels sprouts for leaves should be ready in about May as well, and they'll keep going though until July. The Calabrese will finish in May, and they'll be growing in the polytunnel, and when I clear those, they will be followed by tomatoes. So that is pretty much it for November, not very much. So I've just removed my last cucumbers and tomatoes, which were in these 6 containers. I've got 3 at this end of the polytunnel, and I've got another 3 down the other end of the polytunnel. So I just take the roots out, fork in some bloodfish and bone, and I'm going to give these a really good water so they're really well saturated. And in about a week, 2 weeks time, I'll start sowing carrots into these. Now I'll probably do a succession towards the end of this month, and then I'll do another one in November, 5th of November, which is what I had in my sowing entry for November. And as I think I mentioned, the objective is not to get big carrots at this time of year. The objective is to have them really small, basically as small as you can get them, and keep them alive. And they won't grow until towards the end of February, early March. Then they'll kick into life, and you will get carrots 3 or 4 weeks earlier than you would if you sowed them in February. But also, I find the quality is often way better than ones that I did in February. I don't know why, but it just seems to be. Now these containers then in April, beginning of April, will go on the top of these IBC tanks, basically where those carrots are now. And fingers crossed they don't get carrot fly, because they did this year. I'll probably leave 2 containers, the biggest ones because they're too heavy to lift, in the polytunnel. But really carrots, by April time, it's getting a bit hot in the polytunnel for them. So 4 of the containers at least will go outside. And that should give me a nice succession. I've got 6 beds of carrots outside, and they will see me through until the end of March. Then I've got, in theory, these carrots, which I would be eating in April. Unfortunately, they got mildew, so I've taken all the tops off. There's still reasonably sized carrots in here, but there's plenty of time for them to regrow, the tops, and so they'll still keep growing until probably December time, and then they'll just stay in this compost until April, and by the end of April all of these in the containers should start coming ready. So I hope you liked this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.